brother and as a teammate. What does Kyrie mean to you? Kyrie, as a teammate and a brother, what does Luka mean to you?
Oh, we're getting emotional now.
Like, you don't talk about it.
Go
ahead, man.
Yeah, because you get the long speeches.
Yeah,
Big time, man. When he came, nothing but supportive of everything I did, everything we did. But just it helped me mature a lot, realize to see the game in a different way. And obviously in the court, it's amazing to play with a guy like him. Like I said, just go out there, enjoy. And the leader he's been for us, not just for me, but for us, he's been amazing. Always positive energy.
For the second time in the last 3 seasons, the Dallas Mavericks are headed to the Western Conference Finals thanks to an epic triple-double from Luka Doncic, a rookie with a monster rebounding night, and Kyrie Irving doing his thing in the fourth quarter with some help from P.J. Washington free throws to seal it. This is Inside the Mavs. Welcome to Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura. I'm your host, Kevin Gray, Mavericks Pre and Postgame host on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Appreciate you joining me here for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, make sure you like and comment on the video and subscribe to Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. And you can follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports as well. As we follow the Dallas Mavericks back to the Western Conference Finals for the second time in the last 3 years, they take out the Oklahoma City Thunder 117-116 to win the series 4-2, and now will take on the winner of the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves with the Western Conference Finals beginning on Wednesday. For the 6th time in franchise history, the Mavericks are back in the West Final as they look to get to the NBA Finals, of course, for the first time since they won the NBA championship back in 2011. But for this version of the Dallas Mavericks, a resilient 17-point comeback that saw them be able to seal it with a couple of P.J. Washington Jr. free throws, and the Mavericks escape with the 1-point win and move on to the West Final, thanks in large part to a rookie named Dereck Lively II, who was absolutely sensational with his offensive rebounding, his hustle and energy throughout the course of game number 6. Luka Doncic with his 3rd straight triple-double. Doncic, of course, going in this game for 29 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists. Kyrie Irving was sensational in the second half, 18 of his 22 points coming after intermission as the Mavericks got a total team effort. And again, with guys like P.J. Washington Jr., who had all 9 of his points in the fourth quarter. Derrick Jones Jr. setting another career playoff high with 22 points, going 8 of 13 from the field. Derrick Jones Jr. in the last 3 games of this series, 17, 19, and now 22 points. He was able to do terrific on both the offensive and defensive end. And for a guy who was on a minimum contract, the last guy signed to this team at the beginning of the season, he has earned himself the right to be a hero as far as the Mavericks are concerned. And he was absolutely terrific in game number 6, where the Mavericks had to overcome some self-inflicted wounds, if you will, in terms of the turnover department, where in the first half, the Mavericks simply continued to turn the ball over way too much. They had 12 turnovers in the first half that led to 23 Thunder points, and the Thunder were really able to get after them, especially when you look at what they did in the second quarter, which we'll detail here in just a little bit. But you give the credit to the Mavericks and this resilient group for continuing to stay the course and not give up, and now find themselves back in the Western Conference Finals with the team that has been really completely remade around Luka Doncic with the acquisitions, of course, of Dereck Lively in the draft, Daniel Gafford, P.J. Washington, Derrick Jones Jr., and obviously for Kyrie Irving, who has continued to be a second-half closer, a leader for this team, and provided them exactly what was needed in terms of his veteran leadership. And you saw that play itself out as the game went on, as it has gone on so far in the course of these NBA playoffs. And for him, and which you'll hear from him a little bit later on, taking in these special moments, him talking about Luka Doncic and what he means to him as a brother and as a teammate. And you saw the hug and embrace that they had after a very difficult, very hard-fought, tough series. And for Kyrie Irving, someone who has constantly talked about against the Thunder, one of the most difficult series that he's been in from a physical standpoint, the Thunder doing a great job of trying to take things away from him in terms of doubling him and trying to make him a passer. But in the end, he was able to find his offensive groove for the Mavericks, especially in the second half when you needed him most. And as you look at this game, starting off in the first half, obviously the Thunder got off to a great start. In fact, started 6 of 6 from the field, and at one point was up 16-6. But the Mavericks were able to get themselves back in it. They used an 8-0 run that had the Thunder leading them 23-19, and they led by 7 at the end of the first quarter after a Jalen Williams half-court buzzer beater to be able to get them off to a good start. Lu Dort got off to a really hot start with 9 points, knocking down some outside shots. But for the Mavericks, they were able to still find themselves only down 7, despite how well the Thunder got off in terms of the offensive start. Luka Doncic had 8 points in that first quarter. But what really started to turn the game, you thought maybe for the Oklahoma City Thunder in terms of them winning this game, was what happened in the second quarter. And we'll detail more of that when it comes to the second quarter on the other side of the break. But before we get there, let's hear from today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, and let's hear from Aura. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on Inside the Mavs, thank you for hanging out with us at that spot, and thank you to today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, in Aura, as the Mavericks get back to the Western Conference Finals for the second time in the last 3 years and for the 6th time in franchise history as they await the winner of the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves in Game 7 of their series. But this game really started to take a turn in the second quarter, and where you saw where the Mavericks were down by 7 at the end of one. As I mentioned, Jalen Williams hit a three-pointer from half court to extend the Thunder lead to 7 at 30-23. Mavericks down by 7 to begin the second period. The Thunder were able to extend their lead to 11 at 38-27, just 3.5 minutes into the second quarter. But the Mavericks would respond on what eventually became a 15-2 run after a Luka Doncic three-pointer, as the Mavericks found themselves down by 11, but were able to eventually get that lead. And you felt like the momentum of the game started to turn. Kyrie Irving was able to get a rebound and take it coast to coast to have them only down by 8 at 38-30. Then Derrick Jones Jr. gets a beautiful dunk off an alley-oop from Luka Doncic. Again, Derrick Jones Jr., guys like Josh Green continuing to make impacts in this series the way that they did. Josh Green hitting a three-pointer on the left wing that cut the lead eventually to 1. Luka Doncic gets to 15 points of the game at that particular point with 4:54 left in the second quarter by drilling a three-pointer on the left wing, and the Mavericks all of a sudden are up 42-40. And you feel like at that point, okay, the Mavericks were able to crawl themselves back into this game, scratch and claw, and find them a way to get a lead. Let's see how they build upon that, hopefully going into halftime. But the Oklahoma City Thunder, what they showed you in this series is that they're going to be a team that's going to have to be reckoned with for a long time, because they would use the final 4 minutes and 54 seconds to outscore the Mavericks 24-6 and completely turn around the feeling of the game. And all of a sudden, what was a 2-point lead turned into a 16-point deficit at halftime as the Mavericks were down 64-48. And again, being doomed by the turnover problem, as they had 6 turnovers that led to 12 Thunder points in that second quarter. So for the Mavericks, just too many turnovers in the first half, as we mentioned, where they turned the ball over 12 times. That led to 23 Thunder points, despite the fact that at halftime, you look at the numbers in terms of what the Mavericks were shooting, shot the ball pretty well in the first half. In fact, you look at what they did, they shot 51% from the field in the first half, and a not too bad 38% from the three-point line. The Thunder themselves shot 42% from three, going 10 of 24, which really was able to help stake them to that lead, along with obviously with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who had a monster second quarter, who had 14 points in that period, being able to get to his spot, to be able to get to the mid-range as smoothly as he does. And the Thunder shot 49% for the first half. But again, it was the turnovers that were really killing the Mavericks in the first half. So here we are, the Mavericks down by 16, and you're feeling like, okay, it looks like we're headed toward a game 7. But the Mavericks, much like they've done all season long, simply didn't give up, even with some of the things that you saw in the first half. Luka Doncic picking up a technical foul with just over 10 minutes left in the second quarter. PJ Washington picked up his third foul with less than 3 minutes into the second quarter as well. So you felt like things just simply weren't going their way, even with some of the nice things that you saw, especially from a guy like Josh Green, who was effective looking for his offense, making the spinning jumper, attacking off the dribble to get to the free throw line. Jaden Hardy making some things happen. Threw another alley-oop to Daniel Gafford. That was part of that run that actually ended what was a Thunder 8-0 run to have the Mavericks down by 4 at 48-44 with 2:52 left. But the Thunder just simply poured it on at the end of the first half, as I mentioned, outscoring the Mavericks 24-6 to take that 16-point lead into the second half. And you felt like, how did the Mavericks find a way to slowly chip away to get themselves back into this game, to give themselves an opportunity to be able to win? And guess what? They found a way to do it, because as we've talked about, I said it during the pregame show, I've said it on this podcast, the ability for the Mavericks to pay attention to detail and to do the little things. And it was going to take a total team effort for them to take out the Thunder in Game 6 in order to move on to the Western Conference Finals. I said it during the pregame show. A victory is not going to come easy against this talented group who are looking to play with a sense of desperation to get this thing back to Oklahoma City, where they, of course, had earned the number 1 seed. They were 33-8 at home during the regular season, but, of course, the Mavericks won 2 games on the road in this series. So even if it did go back to a Game 7, you could feel confident that the Mavericks would be able to win a game if they had to in OKC, but you did not want to have that scenario obviously present itself. And I'm sure for the Mavericks, who have been detailing this and talked about it after the halftime as well, they didn't want to go back to Oklahoma City either for a potential Game 7. And they came out in the second half and played with that sense of desperation. You look at what they did numbers-wise in the second half, outscoring the Oklahoma City Thunder 69-52 in the second half to obviously get the 1-point win. The Mavericks down by 16 to start the second half. Derrick Jones Jr. got off to a hot start, scoring 8 of the first 10 points of that third period, but the Thunder still led by 15, 2.5 minutes into the third. Jalen Williams got off to a hot start. We were waiting for him to be able to pick some things up for the Thunder, and he did so, especially in that third quarter, scoring 7 of the first 9 points for OKC. Eventually, the Thunder would get up to what would be a 17-point lead, a 77 to 60 lead, their biggest lead of the game. But the Mavericks, after they had went on a 9-2 run, did the Thunder. After the Mavericks had cut the deficit to 10, the Mavericks had cut it to 68-58. But then you saw what the Thunder were able to do as they went on that 9-2 run, as I explained, to be able to get themselves where they were at 77-60 with just over 10 minutes left in the period. The Mavericks, though, would respond with what would be an 11-0 run over a 2-minute span. Eventually, it turned into a 13-0 run that cut the Thunder lead to 4 at 77-73. And you felt like, okay, once again, you had been able to overcome a double-digit deficit in the first half to be able to take a lead. But then you saw the Thunder respond to be able to take a 16-point lead in the halftime. The Thunder build on that early on in the third quarter. But again, the Mavericks sticking and staying with the course. I've talked to many a player about this in terms of staying the course throughout in these playoffs, and they did so in Game 6. They were able to cut it to 4 at 77-73 midway through the quarter, where the Thunder went scoreless for over 5 minutes. The Mavericks defense clamping down on the Thunder, and they went cold going over 5 minutes without a basket despite leading by 8 points. But the Thunder went on a 13-5 run to reestablish what was a 12-point lead at 90-78 after a Josh Giddey bucket. SGA got cooking once again, especially late in that third quarter, at one point scoring 7 straight points. And the Mavericks, though, would score the final 5 points of the third quarter, including Derrick Jones Jr.'s three-pointer that made it a 7-point deficit at the end of 3, 90-83. This is despite the fact, again, the Mavericks shot the ball extremely well throughout the course of this game. In the third quarter, they shot 54.5% from 3 and 54.5% overall from the field. But again, what was a huge deficit that had been built up at halftime, the Thunder were able to maintain what was that 7-point lead going into the fourth quarter. Derrick Jones Jr. had a monster period with 11 points. Luka and Kyrie each had 10 for the Mavericks. And before we get to the fourth quarter, because obviously as we started to look at what was a 7-point deficit going into the fourth, the Mavericks still chipping away at trying to make this comeback, Luka and Kyrie continue to stay the course and be able to put this team in position to win. PJ Washington obviously having a monster fourth quarter. But here is Kyrie Irving talking about Luka Doncic and what Kyrie and Luka mean to each other, and specifically what Kyrie believes that Luka means to him as a teammate and a brother. And I play this before we talk about the fourth quarter because it gives you a sense and an idea of what these two wanted to do to not only continue to play for each other, but what that meant for how they have operated throughout the course of the season. Take a listen.
I think this guy next to me has pushed me to continue to work on my game and continue to develop as a young leader. And I think the big word that we both can agree on is just maturity. Coming into Dallas, I was dealing with a lot mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and they embraced me with open arms. You know, I don't have a perfect journey, so coming into this environment, I was unsure how we were going to work out on the court, but off the court, I knew eventually that I would get him to open up. This guy's a big teddy bear at times off the court, big competitor. Okay, I'll say a teddy bear that likes to compete. You know, he's still ducking me in dominoes, but, you know, I think at times, you know, I just have to sit back and marvel at his talent and his ability to get outside his comfort zone. And, you know, I enjoy watching him be a father. I enjoy watching him, you know, develop as a person first, and then the basketball stuff will take care of it. We all know how skilled he is. We all know his numbers and stuff like that. But I want to be a teammate and a brother next to him that helps him grow as a man and helps him achieve the things that he wants to achieve. And I know he feels the same way. So the mission is still the same for us. And when we step on that court, we enjoy competing with each other. And the times that you guys don't get to see is the times we get to compete against each other on the court in practice, which we just laugh and joke and we work out together. And, you know, we know that this dream of ours started when we were a kid. So to connect like this on this level, I'm 32, you know, he's a young 25, 26, you know.
24.
So he's still growing.
No, 25.
He's 25, 26, 27.
20.
The beard makes him older, so. But no, he's just a good kid, man. Good human being, good young man.
So Kyrie obviously talking about what Luka means to him and the way that they've helped each other grow throughout the course of the season. And you've seen how that has played itself out in the playoffs. And part of not just Luka and Kyrie growing together as leaders on this team and as teammates and as brothers and as two individuals who are extremely talented and have molded their games to be able to mesh to help this team get back to the Western Conference Finals. That leadership is evident in the teammates that are around them, specifically when you look at a Dereck Lively II, who has shown a maturity beyond his years and has continued to play extremely good basketball. And you saw that especially play itself out huge in the fourth quarter. We mentioned the numbers that Dereck Lively had in this game, where, of course, he had 12 points and 15 rebounds, was a plus 26 in game number 6. And for him, his continued energy and effort and constant pressure at the rim in terms of his rebounding was absolutely sensational and something that the Mavericks needed, especially in the second half. Daniel Gafford has struggled throughout the course of this series, but you saw as long as Dereck Lively was in that lineup, he was providing a stabilizing force, whether it be his rim protection and shot deterrence at the rim. But in this game, it was his rebounding, particularly on the offensive glass. You saw what the Mavericks were able to do from an offensive rebounding standpoint and a rebounding standpoint overall, out rebounding the Thunder 47-31, 14-7 on the offensive glass. Dereck Lively II with 4 offensive rebounds in the game, 15 overall. And as you look at the fourth quarter, Mavericks down by 7 to begin the period. The Thunder maintained that 7-point lead at 97-90 with 4 minutes into the period after an Isaiah Joe three-pointer. The Mavericks would respond with a quick 5-0 run to cut the deficit to 2 at 97-95 after another Kyrie Irving three-pointer with just under 7 minutes left in the game, forcing what was a Thunder timeout. Eventually, the Mavericks would tie it at 97 with 6.5 minutes left in the game, thanks to a Dereck Lively getting his 15th rebound of the game on a put-back dunk to tie the game at 97 with 6:30 left in the period. And I thought that was just a punctuating moment for him throughout the course of this game, where his offensive rebounding was absolutely sensational. You saw at one point being able to get offensive rebounds that led to a Kyrie Irving three-pointer that pulled it within 2 with just under 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. You saw again how his activity was constantly putting pressure on the Oklahoma City Thunder, which we knew the Mavericks had an advantage with in terms of their size and their ability to rebound the basketball. And they proved that, especially in game 6. And Dereck Lively was a massive, massive part of that. Not only his offensive rebounding leading to threes for Kyrie Irving, but also for second chance opportunities, where the Mavericks had 27 second chance points in game 6, the most second chance points that they've had in a game in the last 25 years. Just giving you an indication of it being the hustle and the energy plays needed to be able to win a game like this, which they were able to do. But the Thunder would go on an 8-4 run to lead 105-101 after an SGA turnaround jumper with just under 5 minutes to go in the game, forcing a Mavericks timeout. But the Mavericks, again, responding with resilience, go on a 6-0 run to take a 107-105 lead. Eventually, we're tied at 110 after a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander basket. That's where P.J. Washington would step up and hit a three-pointer to put the Mavericks in front 113-110. You saw Washington tie the game by drilling a three-pointer after getting an offensive rebound. Luka Doncic getting the pass and then kicking it back to Washington in that left corner, tying the game at 105 at that point. Again, offensive rebounding leading to second chance opportunities. And even though P.J. Washington had struggled throughout the course of the game in foul trouble, not scoring, he came up big in the fourth quarter, of course, with the 9 points in the 2 game-winning free throws that he had. But then Luka Doncic put the Mavericks at 107-105 with 3.5 minutes left in the game with a jumper of his own. As we mentioned, it got to 110. Washington hits the three-pointer to put him up 113-110. Then Derrick Jones Jr. gets him up again with this tough fadeaway over Chet Holmgren that puts them up 5 at 115-110 with just a minute 11 left in the game. And you feel like, okay, maybe the Mavericks are going to pull this thing out because of the incredible shot making that they had done in the fourth quarter, where they scored in that period 34 points after scoring 35 in the third quarter. But after that, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander would hit a three-pointer at the top of the key that pulled him within 2 at 115, 113 with a minute left in the game. And then you get an away from the ball foul that allowed Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to get to the free throw line. He would make the free throw to cut the lead to 115 to 114. And then when they retained possession, they found Chet Holmgren for a dunk and an alley-oop out from SGA. And now the Thunder up 116, 115 with 20 seconds left in the game. But then PJ Washington, again, who had been struggling throughout the course of the game, gets to his left corner spot, attempts a three, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander commits the cardinal sin of fouling a three-point shooter and did so with 2 seconds left in the game. And what did PJ Washington do? He stepped up there and knocked down 2 free throws to be able to win the game for the Mavericks. And it's funny because we talked about what happened after game 4, the collapse that the Mavericks had there where they had a chance to take a 3-1 series lead. They couldn't make free throws, missing 11 of the 23 free throws that they attempted in game 4. And if they had lost this series, we would look back at game 4 as a real turning point of what happened. But the Mavericks were able to take their time and PJ Washington be able to step up and make the free throws that was needed to win this game. A really cool irony for the Mavericks to be able to win a game after what had been a terrible collapse for them in game 4 to get them back to the Western Conference Finals. And for all of this group, whether it was Dereck Lively and his 15 rebounds, whether it was PJ Washington scoring all 9 of his points in the fourth quarter, whether it was the 22 points from Derrick Jones Jr. hitting 3-pointers, darting to the rim, finishing alley-oop dunks from Luka Doncic, or it was a guy, of course, when you look at Derrick Jones Jr., as I mentioned, PJ Washington, also Dereck Lively, Kyrie Irving scoring the 18 of the 22 points that he had in the second half as the closer, which he's been terrific at all season long. It was a total team effort. You can go up and down the list, whether it was Josh Green making some plays, Jaden Hardy, who made some plays and had some good opportunities, even with some of the miscues in terms of the turnovers. Everyone was needed to get on board to win this game, and they led with their defense, only allowing 52 points in the second half after they had been down by 16 in the first half. And I want you to listen to obviously what not only you heard Luka at the beginning of the show talking about what Kyrie means to him. We've heard from Kyrie in terms of what Luka means to him. But Kyrie Irving, who is back in the conference finals, you remember at one point made 3 straight conference finals when he was with the Cleveland Cavaliers, obviously winning an NBA championship back in 2016. Listen to him describe how special this moment is after all the things that this team has been through and what he's been through to get himself in a position to be able to have an opportunity to get back, to have a chance to maybe get back to the NBA Finals. Listen to what the Kyrie Irving had to say here.
The game, you finish up your ESPN interview, you give your shoes to the fan. I think you got your dart and you're walking off. All the fans are surrounding you, phones out, cheering you on. I'm just curious, how special are those moments to you in your career?
I mean, just that whole walk-off, hugging my family and then going and hugging some more of my family in the locker room, everybody cheering for each other. And I had to make an impromptu speech, and I was doing my best not to let some tears come down from my eyes because it feels like it's been a long time coming, just being back in this position, getting back to the, finals or the conference finals. It's just a long way back, and look back at parts of my career where I took it for granted, just getting to the conference finals, for 3 years straight, and then not getting back for a little bit, to weigh on you as a competitor. So I'm grateful that I had these guys beside me and kept feeding me confidence and, kept doing the little things for one another. And I think that's what, made the celebration feel that much better. So when I get a chance to hug on my family after the game and you just realize that it is just a game. It means a lot to us. We all love it. And that's the connector. But once the buzzer goes off, then, we're back to regular life and we can still celebrate the things that we're accomplishing.
So again, Kyrie Irving displaying the leadership for this team. You saw the post-game speech that he had. If you're looking on it on social media on the Dallas Mavericks account there, this team is special and have proven it all season long with their resiliency, their toughness, their defense, and it all came together in Game 6. They shot 47% from 3, over 51% from the field. They were able to clean it up in terms of the turnover problem. that they had in the first half. As I mentioned, they had the 12 turnovers in the first half. They cut that in half to 6 in the second half to finish with 18. So they cleaned up the mistakes in terms of protecting the basketball. They were able to do what they had to, even with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander having the monster night that he did. You saw Jalen Williams have a really good night as well. But the Mavericks simply were the better team in this series. And I thought about it as I was watching Game 4 when they were up double digits again, just like they were in Game 3 at halftime. Despite the collapse that they had in Game 4, I felt like this team and the Mavericks were a better team if they played their game, the physical style of play, rebounding the basketball, knocking down open corner three-pointers when they had the opportunities to do so, and then being led by their superstars. Because coming into the game, one thing that all these teams have made their adjustments. The Thunder have made their adjustments by getting Josh Giddey out of the lineup, inserting Isaiah Joe. Obviously, for the Mavericks, they used the adjustment of using Jaden Hardy a little bit more as a playmaker, taking up the Dante Exum minutes and the Tim Hardaway Jr. minutes to be able to provide them a little bit of a spark there. And more importantly, the Mavericks made sure that they dominated on the glass, and Dereck Lively II was a major part of that, being able to play as much as he did in the second half. Daniel Gafford dealing with a little bit of injury, but at the same time, this team used everyone that they needed to in order to win, and that is why they are back in the Western Conference Finals once again. And you give them all the credit in the world. You give Jason Kidd credit for the adjustments that he's made throughout the course of this postseason, allowing Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving to continue to play their games, and for Kyrie Irving feeling out this series, playing the game as the maestro, whether it be the passing and the creation for his teammates for open shots, and then being able to pick his spots when he needed to put his imprint on the game, much like he did in Game 6. And what can you say more about Luka Doncic? His third straight triple-double to be able to help this Mavericks team get back to the conference finals with the opportunity to go to the NBA Finals when they take on the winner of the Timberwolves and the Nuggets. All of this and more allowed this team to play a complete game, again, clean up the turnover problem from the first half and be able to put themselves in position to do the little things, knocking down free throws, protecting the ball, make sure that you're finishing out possessions with rebounds, getting yourself second chance opportunities, and executing when you needed to. That's exactly what the Mavericks did to be able to find themselves with this win, 117-116. And now they'll get an important extra day off with, of course, as we mentioned, the Timberwolves and the Nuggets engaging in Game 7 on Sunday. Game number 1 of the West Finals will begin on Wednesday, either in Denver or in Minnesota. Either way, the Mavericks now get to sit back and watch as they see who they'll face in the Western Conference Finals. And shout out to not only the Mavericks, but obviously the Dallas Stars, because the Stars and the Mavericks now, for the first time since being in the same city together, are both in the conference finals after the Stars, of course, took out the Colorado Avalanche to be able to advance to the West Finals for the second straight year. The Mavericks are back there as well. Maybe that's an omen and a sign. The Stars taking out the Avalanche in the second round of the playoffs. Maybe the Mavericks take out the Denver Nuggets on their way to the NBA Finals. It's amazing that we're even having that discussion after what this team has been able to experience in terms of their turnaround. But that is exactly where they are after they defeat the Oklahoma City Thunder in Game 6 to advance to the West Finals for the second time in the last 3 years, the sixth time in franchise history, with Dirk Nowitzki sitting there courtside cheering them on the entire time. The Dallas Mavericks are back in the Western Conference Finals. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Again, thank you so much for joining me here on our latest show. You can download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts for free. Give it a 5-star rating. Write a review for it while you're there. If you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, make sure you like and comment on the video and subscribe. And you can follow me on Twitter as well. We will continue to roll throughout this postseason with post-game recaps, game previews, and everything else, as I'm your Mavericks pre- and post-game host on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Again, follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. The Mavericks headed to the West Finals once again. And this has been Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura.